What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, here with my instant reaction to the Packers taking down the Commanders 27-18 on Thursday Night Football. The Packers are going to be in the NFC Championship this year. When the Packers saw the Eagles sign Saquon Barkley and win the Super Bowl last season, they realized that they can no longer be the conservative organization that they've been for over 2 decades plus. They realize now that they have to be aggressive. They can no longer build through the draft, not take any big swings in free agency or through trades. They have to build the best roster possible by any means necessary. If that means having to give up a lot of future assets to get a guy like Micah Parsons, make him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, that's what it's now going to take for Green Bay to survive in this new era of the NFL. Because Howie Roseman, since he's been the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles, what has made him the best GM in the NFL is his aggressiveness. But not only is he aggressive, but he takes calculated risk. It's not just all about trading up a bunch of assets to get top 10 picks. It's not all about trying to trade away big players so you can acquire more first-round picks to build up your team. Howie Roseman has showed that all you need to build a Super Bowl contender is common sense and good decision making. It's not that hard. A lot of his best moves have come from teams that were making trades with the Eagles out of desperation. There's a difference between being aggressive and being desperate. Howie Roseman and the Eagles, they cross that line of being aggressive. When they're making moves, they have a plan. They know where they're trying to go. And when they signed Saquon Barkley, you put him on a team that was already built to win a Super Bowl, and you add a super weapon at running back, all you further did was increase your chances for success. That's what the Packers did when they traded for Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is one of the few prime defensive players that has been available for trade in my lifetime watching the NFL. The last time I can remember a player of Micah Parsons' caliber getting traded was the Raiders when they traded Khalil Mack to the Bears. That's probably the last time. Micah Parsons is this year's equivalent to the Saquon Barkley move that the Eagles made last offseason. Getting Micah Parsons now has put the Packers in the prime opportunity to win a Super Bowl within the next 2, 3, 4 seasons. They could win multiple Super Bowls throughout this next stretch because now they have high-end players. They have household names. They got Jordan Love, who is good enough to win MVP this year. With how he has looked the first 2 games of this season, he could be a top 5 quarterback this year. Josh Jacobs, we know how good he is. We know he's one of the best running backs in the league. They got a great defense. They got great receivers. They got great depth everywhere. So even if they do have a few injuries or 2 down the stretch, they can overcome those with the guys they have on their bench. For the Washington Commanders, you have a serious reality check that you're now about to face over the next month or so. Because last year, you were ahead of schedule. You were better than what everybody expected you to be. Before the start of Jaden Daniels' rookie season, the Commanders were no more than a team that was going to win 8 games max if everything went well. But they overachieved. They end up getting favorable matchups in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, it's not always about who's most talented team necessarily. They say that styles make fights. And in the playoffs, certain teams, if they have a certain style and they're going up against opponents that may be more talented than them but aren't suited to stop their style, then they can make a playoff run. We saw the Tennessee Titans do this a few years ago. In 2019, they were a physical football team, and everybody that they went up against during their playoff run couldn't match their physicality, with Derrick Henry leading the charge at running back until they played against the Kansas City Chiefs. A few years ago, when the Bengals made their Super Bowl run in Joe Burrow's second season, they went up against teams in the postseason that year that had weak secondaries. So despite how bad the Bengals' offensive line was, they could convert first downs on 3rd and long with how explosive they were throwing the football. So for the Commanders last season, when you give them a weak schedule and you get to the playoffs and you end up going up against teams that have injuries or just aren't as good from a coaching standpoint as what you are, you were able to be one game short of making it to the Super Bowl. But now with the schedule ramping up, your division being a lot more tougher, you can't just rely off the greatness or the talent of Jaden Daniels to just carry you to wins. Jaden Daniels was doing everything for the Commanders. They had no run game. They had no receivers that could separate. What was the point of paying Terry McLaurin all that money if the guy was going to be a no-show against the Green Bay Packers secondary? You can't name a single player on the Packers secondary, but you know who Terry McLaurin is, though. Yet, he was nowhere to be found tonight. They have no true number 2 option. Getting Deebo Samuel was not a move that was going to propel the Commanders into being a legitimate Super Bowl contender, because Deebo Samuel is no longer a premier number 2, number 1 option in the league anymore. He is a gadget player. He is a running back cosplaying as a receiver. You have to scheme Deebo Samuel open. Deebo Samuel becomes a Super Bowl winning piece if you have another option along with Terry McLaurin, the pair along with him. Getting Terry McLaurin was not the move the Commanders should have made. The move that they should have made was maybe signing a Stephon Diggs or trading for a DK Metcalf. These are all receivers that are still a lot better than what Deebo Samuel is, because Deebo Samuel doesn't have the traditional wide receiver skill set. He can't get open by himself, and he's not reliable because he has butterfingers for hands. He's past his prime. The Commanders also have Marshon Lattimore. Marshon Lattimore needs to retire. He's done. The Packers were running whoever offense on Marshon Lattimore tonight. On the first possession of the Packers having the ball, they targeted Marshon Lattimore 2 times. He was getting routed up by Dontavian Wicks. And then you have number 18 who makes a sideline snag on Marshon Lattimore. I don't even recognize Marshon Lattimore anymore. This dude is a carcass of the player that he used to be. The Commanders' mistake this offseason was going after Deebo Samuel. And a few months before the season ended last year, trading for Marshon Lattimore. The Commanders have 2 aging, regressing veteran players that are no longer what they used to be, and Marshon Lattimore and Deebo Samuel. And these 2 moves are ones that are going to cause this team to regress this season, and it's going to make it look like Jaden Daniels is having a sophomore slump when he isn't. The issue is that the Commanders didn't make any moves to jump them into Super Bowl contention. They made moves to say, we did enough to get better. Not really. Signing Von Miller does not push the needle for the Commanders. Instead of the Commanders going out there and trading for Micah Parsons, they say, oh, let's go out and trade for Deebo Samuel. Let's go trade at the deadline for Marshon Lattimore, who's been injured for the last 3-4 seasons, and when he's on the field, he's one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL now. The Commanders overachieving last year has caused the media to jump the gun on what the actual expectation should be for this organization. They were not Super Bowl contenders. Last season, with them being ahead of schedule, makes year 2 with Dan Quinn being Washington's head coach their true first season. Now they're actually going to have to build this team through the draft. They're going to have to make a few big free agency signings. They're going to have to make a few big trades to truly put themselves into the Super Bowl conversation. Because tonight against the Packers, we saw that it's more than just having an elite quarterback that makes you a Super Bowl contender. You need a great team around them. The Eagles and the Packers have that. The Commanders don't have that around Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels won't be able to carry the Commanders the way that he did last season. And we saw this tonight. Cliff Kingsbury. It looks like the NFL has finally started to figure him out once again when it comes to his offense. Because Cliff Kingsbury's offense, they always lack physicality. And they're always about getting the football out fast, throwing the football within the short intermediate areas of the field, and they never involve making any in-season adjustments. And there's no wonder why anytime the Commanders go up against a team with elite defense personnel, with also elite defensive coaching, why they always end up losing games by multiple possessions. When Cliff Kingsbury is going up against elite defensive coordinators, the Commanders' offense always gets boxed. And it's not just them lacking star power at receiver, but it's also Cliff Kingsbury being the guy that struggles to adapt. And you're starting to see more and more when the Commanders play against good teams, the NFL figuring out Jaden Daniels and this offense. The Commanders are a work in progress. They were not the team that we thought they were going to be this season based off recency bias. They are a team that is still rebuilding. They are a work in progress. And there are going to be more games that the Commanders play in like they did when they got manhandled tonight against the Packers this season. The Packers are a scary team. And I expect to see them in the NFC Championship this year. Brock Purdy is out for the next 2 to 5 weeks with turf toe, and we're about to find out just how true is it that Brock Purdy is a system quarterback and he's the beneficiary of a good situation, having a great offensive mind, a good supporting cast around him. What's ironic about this whole situation is how Kyle Shanahan, a few years ago when the 49ers traded up the farm to get Trey Lance, initially, Kyle Shanahan wanted to draft Mac Jones, but he was told you can't draft a quarterback like Mac Jones high who may have the intangibles, but he doesn't have the physical upsides, the arm strength, the elite mobility to be a high-end quarterback. Well, Mac Jones is now the next man up. And this is the guy who Kyle Shanahan felt was a perfect fit for his system. Mac Jones, with how easy the 49ers schedule is, should be able, best case scenario, have this team 6-0 when Brock Purdy is fully healthy, if he does indeed miss the next 5 weeks. They don't play anybody that really is that good until the Rams and the Buccaneers, which the 49ers can win that game because Kyle Shanahan can outcoach Todd Bowles. So with Brock Purdy being injured, the season is not over for the 49ers. As a matter of fact, in spite of all of the injuries that the 49ers have suffered this early into this season, I think it's a little bit of a good thing. Because you rather deal with injuries early during the season than late during the season. Because if you are dealing with injuries early during the season and you get these guys back around late November, after Thanksgiving, then that's when you get close to the playoffs. That's when you want to be at near full strength. Because that's when you make your last-ditch effort to make that playoff push. The 49ers also brought back Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator, but nobody seems to be talking about it. Everybody seems to have forgotten how great of a defensive coordinator Robert Saleh is, and the 49ers now have him back as their defensive coordinator. They are going to have an elite defense. Their defense was out there whacking shit last week against the Seattle Seahawks. Sam Darnold couldn't do anything. The Seahawks couldn't even run the football. Robert Saleh being back in the Bay Area is going to have a huge impact on the 49ers catapulting themselves back into Super Bowl contention. There is no need to trip over Brock Purdy missing a few weeks with turf toe. Mac Jones was the quarterback that Kyle Shanahan truly wanted to drive when they traded up the farm to get Trey Lance a few years ago. He's accurate. He throws with solid anticipation. And Kyle Shanahan is the quarterback whisperer. If any quarterback that he touches turns into gold like Brock Purdy, then Mac Jones could end up reviving his career and getting paid a huge contract in free agency, getting another opportunity to be a starter again with how great of an offensive mind that Kyle Shanahan is. He's going to be able to bring the best out of Mac Jones, and a few of us are going to realize why Mac Jones actually was a first-round pick to begin with. Kyle Shanahan, I think that he knows that the 49ers are in pretty good hands with Mac Jones taking over until Brock Purdy gets back healthy. It seems like for the last 6 years, it's been the same teams being discussed in the Super Bowl conversation. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Rams, Eagles, and the 49ers. I feel that discussion is about to change this season, though. We are about to see some new blood breaking into the Super Bowl conversation this year. There is going to be at least 2 teams with new head coaches, new quarterbacks that break into that Super Bowl bubble. In the NFC, one of those teams could be the Green Bay Packers. For the last few years, it's just been the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Rams. The Packers, they came up close a few years ago when they lost to the Lions in the divisional round. This year, we could see the Packers creep into that Super Bowl discussion. They now have the high-end talent that they've lacked that has kept them out of Super Bowl contention for the last couple of years. They went from being a team that was just, you knew about Jordan Love, maybe you knew about Xavier McKinney, and who else? Now you see Xavier McKinney, Micah Parsons, Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love, stars all over the place in Green Bay. How about in the AFC? The Denver Broncos. I know they didn't look good in week 1, but they still have a top 3 defense. Bo Nix, he shakes back and he ends up taking a big jump in year 2. The Broncos could easily be a team that we could see out of nowhere in the AFC Championship. How about their big inter-division rival, the Los Angeles Chargers, year 2 under Jim Harbaugh? This is a Jim Harbaugh team with Justin Herbert playing as good as football as he's ever played at this stage of his career. He could play good enough to win MVP this year. And we know the run game is going to be really good. Greg Roman, from 2015 to 2020, led the NFL in rushing yards per game, being the offensive coordinator for the Bills and the Ravens during that stretch. By the way, the Chargers have a great defense as well, with a defensive coordinator, Jesse Mentor, who more than likely is going to be a hot commodity on the head coaching carousel at the end of this season. The Houston Texans, if they can figure out that offensive line, we know C.J. Stroud's one of the ones. Defensively, they're as good as anybody else in the league on that side of the ball. So the offensive line, if they can figure that out, we can see them get into the Super Bowl conversation. But for just half a decade, it feels like, since 2020, when we saw Tom Brady get into the last leg of his career, it's just been so many young, talented quarterbacks entering the NFL that have yet to really have a shot at winning the Super Bowl, both in the NFC, AFC. I feel that's about to change now. We could see C.J. Stroud, Bo Nix make it out of the AFC. And in the NFC, you could see Jordan Love taking the Packers back to the Super Bowl, a place they haven't been in 15 years. I think there's just so many good quarterbacks, and quarterback play is getting so better, at least to me. I know some people may say the quarterback play is getting worse, but with so many offensive coordinators now implementing a lot of these college schemes into their offense in some capacity, if you have at least 3 years of experience starting in college as a quarterback, you set yourself up pretty well for success at the next level. Eventually, you are going to start seeing different teams pop into Super Bowl conversation than just the same ones that we've seen. And eventually, I think that the NFL could have a lot more parity than what we've had in the last 2 decades. There are just too many good teams with good coaches and good quarterbacks that have good front offices that are very close to breaking into that Super Bowl discussion. The Packers are one of those teams, and eventually we'll see some new blood in the Super Bowl bubble.